the means at hand to get all their kids in school.
Yeah.
And so they literally cannot fund that by themselves. So I'm trying to work on financing models, ways that they can do it. Basic idea, quite simple. Borrow today, but on very long-term, low interest.
Oh, that makes me nervous, Jeff.
No, but I'm going to tell you why. Because the next generation is going to be a lot richer if they get that education. The returns to education are extremely high. They're about 20% rate of return of putting a kid from, say, kindergarten up through, if you do tertiary, if you do 2-year or 4-year post high school, you get about a 20% compound return. If you borrow at 2 or 3% real interest rates, and you do that for 40 years, where's the money come from to repay the loan? A wealthy economy.
That sounds great, and I love the model. I think what I'm concerned with is that history demonstrates a different kind of outcome. I think about countries like China, for example, that have invested billions into African infrastructure, ostensibly to produce growth and development in the country. It seems like
it's working.
Yeah, but look at a place like Zambia.
It's working, but I'll tell you what mistake they make, and I tell them all the time, by the way, which is that they gave Zambia an 8-year loan or a 10-year loan.
I was going to say, they spend so much money on debt repayment that they have to cut social services, healthcare, all this stuff to pay the debt back.
Completely correct.
But that's kind of the history of Africa.
Yeah, but the mistake is, and it's China's mistake also, it's not a malevolent mistake. It's not a trap. It is a mistake, though. You cannot finance development on a 10-year loan. Development is a 40-year process. It's not a 10-year process. And we are so nasty to tell a poor country that maybe gets the kid from kindergarten to 9th grade. Now you pay back the loan. I'm sorry, the kid's still in 9th grade.
Right.
So you need 40-year debt. And what I'm saying to the Chinese government officials who listen to me and at least hear my arguments is just extend these loans at low interest, but make this not due today. That's crazy. Make it due 25,
Are they willing
30
to
years
do that?
from now.
I mean, I could see why these superpowers don't want to do that, but it's in their interest to get faster returns.
I think that they are willing to do that, actually.
Okay.
So that is my idea. The other idea, which I don't like, which is the IMF's idea, I'm sorry to say, is, well, Mr. Finance Minister, it would just be great for all those kids to be in school, but you don't have the money. And I know you'd love a little electricity, but so sorry, there's no money there. So that, to my mind, is the real poverty trap, which is you don't finance the absolute core investment. But coming back to Africa's prospects, when I do the arithmetic on my spreadsheets, I find that Africa can grow 7% to 10% per year for the next 40 years. In 1980, with its 1.4 billion people, China took off. India, with its 1.4 billion people, now 1.5, it started about 20 years after China in rapid growth, around 2000. I want Africa to start now. It's also got 1.5 billion people. It's the same size, actually.
Right. But the additional challenge of being multiple countries as opposed to singular nations.
Well, in 1885, in that very polite Congress of Berlin, the European countries, with no Africans present, took the map and divided up among themselves and colonized the whole damn continent and left it, in the end, as 55 separate countries on one continent where there's one China and there's one India.
Right.
That makes governance hard. And so my point about governance in Africa is be a union, really. Have an Africa continental free trade area. When you plan your infrastructure, don't plan it 55 times. Get that rail to connect across Africa. Get the highways to connect. Get the fiber to connect. think of it as one country, basically. Think of it truly as a union.
Let's move to something less controversial. Let's talk Israel-Palestine.
Yeah, that one's an easy one.
The genocide in Gaza has been going on for a little over a year and a half now. And recently, we've seen a shift. Countries like France, the UK, Canada, even Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has been more critical of Israel. Given the scale of devastation, are we at a point where the response we're starting to see is a case of kind of too little, too late?
Well, it's shockingly late, this is for sure, because just on the official count, there are more than 50,000 dead, and mostly women and children.
Yeah.
So a genocide's been going on all this time, and Europe and the United States were either supporting it actively, as the United States has been doing, or supporting it tacitly by just standing by. Now they're saying something, they're murmuring, but God, it's still far too little, because what should be said, to my mind, is not only that this has to stop, and there was a vote in the UN Security Council just in recent days. 14 of the 15 countries said immediate ceasefire, because people are getting killed massively every day, civilians. But one vetoed it, the Trump administration. So first thing is, of course, stop this mass killing. But the second thing is recognize the state of Palestine. No doubt, no negotiations, no peace process, no baloney, no, we need to get Israel to agree, because Israel will never agree. The problem, of course, is that Israel has a completely radical, I think genocidal government with Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and they're mass murderers as far as I'm concerned. And their goal is not defeat Hamas. Their goal is to control everything. This is clear. They don't say, and I think it's the telltale point about Netanyahu, although if you press him, then he would acknowledge it. They don't say, we need to defeat Hamas and then we're going to have a state of Palestine. They say, we need to defeat Hamas. Well, what after that? Well, it's none of your goddamn business. Right. And if you press hard, well, we're going to be there forever.
Well, recently, we've seen some tensions emerge between Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Boy, I hope so. I hope so. I hope we're seeing some tensions.
I mean, Trump did not meet with him in his most recent trip to the Middle East, which seems like a big deal. Some people even said it was a snub.
I hope so. God, if there's anyone that deserves a snub, it's Bibi Netanyahu.
If that's true, does that change anything on the ground in terms of U.S. policy?
Look, the president needs to do one thing. Basically one thing and one thing only, and that's to drop the U.S. veto on a state of Palestine. Why is there not a state of Palestine according to international law? For one and only one reason: the U.S. vetoes it, because membership in the United Nations goes through the UN Security Council. When it came up last year, the U.S. was the only veto. It was actually 12 in favor, 2 abstained, the United States vetoed. When it goes to the General Assembly, where there are 193 countries, about 185 say yes. Yeah. And when I added up the population of those 185, it is 95% of the world population saying yes. So President Trump snubbing Netanyahu's one thing, not liking him is another thing, but there's only one operational thing that counts. Stop vetoing Palestine's membership in the United Nations. And the point that I would make to President Trump and to the American people is this would be hugely beneficial for American national security, because it would bring peace to the Middle East. The reason the wars rage is that there is no state of Palestine. That leads to resistance, that leads to counter wars, that leads to Netanyahu's counter wars, or calling on the United States to invade another country, as he has done repeatedly. If we want peace, which we do, the way to peace is a state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. period, which 185 countries of the world support.
You've written about the U.S. belief in its need to dominate and the idea that historically the United States has seen itself as exceptional. In your book on American exceptionalism, which was published during the first Trump administration, you warned that this mindset was not only outdated but also dangerous. Are there any signs that the U.S.'s self-perception is shifting from the exceptionalist idea?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There are glimmers of hope. Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said, and I nearly quote him, that we are now in a multipolar world. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That is a very good statement. President Trump has said he can see President Putin's point of view that NATO should not enlarge to Ukraine. That is a very good statement. That is absolutely positive. I want him to recognize the same thing when it comes to the Middle East. I want the president to recognize the same thing when it comes to China. I want the president to make peace with Iran rather than following Bibi Netanyahu into some bombing mission against Iran. If those things happen, that would be the recognition that we have some limits, that we're in a multipolar world, and that we can't bomb our way out of it.
Jeffrey Sachs, thanks so much for joining me on Upfront.
Oh, really great to be with you. Thanks. Extremely high. They're about 20